Hello, BattleTech fans. All right, so I've been thinking a lot about the Kickstarter, Catalyst, BattleTech in general, and I've been kind of ruminating on this. One thing keeps coming, just kind of nagging at the back of my mind. I'm kind of wondering if we're not about to hit a peak BattleTech kind of era and phase here coming up. And there, it's feeling to me like maybe as early as mid to late 2025 might be the peak. And there are three contributing factors to that. One, I just think the general economic macro conditions are probably putting some pressure towards a flattening. The other one contributing to this, I think how we got to these high highs in BattleTech is going to contribute to that as well. And then the product strategy from Catalyst, I don't think is going to be enough to impact growth, continued growth. I think it might just maintain or slowly let the air out of the tires. That's not criticism of them. That's just my read. And then I kind of wonder, does it even matter that we're reaching a peak? What happens? So this is just kind of a fun thought exercise I put together here, and it's very crystal ball reading, right? Who knows whether these things really happen? But let's look at kind of why I am thinking and feeling this way. So one, we'll start with the tabletop market conditions. We're going from this pandemic to a post-pandemic shift. That really means people are returning to more normal spending. We're buying less physical goods and moving more towards services, hospitality, travel. Those things are coming back, which means there's downward pressure on the tabletop market. And then just a note, yes, it's a U.S. election year, but if you look historically, those don't really impact the economy in any great shape or form whatsoever. It produces a lot of anxious feelings in people. People feel like it's going to do something to consumer spending. It generally doesn't. And whoever gets in office, if it's your guy, then you feel happy. And if it's not, then you feel bad about the economics. That's just what it is. It doesn't actually really net out in reality. So there's just a little sub note there. You can also see, this is an article from about, I think, 2 or 3 days ago. We've revised U.S. GDP up 3% on what? On consumer spending, of all things. So yes, consumer spending still showing to be strong. Yet you couple that with articles like this from ICV2 that says we're going flat or down finally in the hobby game space. And it's taken a long time for the hobby space to give up the gains that it had in the rocket ship that was the pandemic, right? Everybody just jumping into D&D 5e. There was a lot of good tailwinds pushing BattleTech at that time. That was Clan Invasion Kickstarter. Finally starting to soften and give up the gains a little bit here in a return towards normal. So that's one. The macro picture is kind of not as favorable for hobby. But then there's this, let's examine, how did we get here? How did we get so many new people or returning people into BattleTech? And how come it's become so vibrant lately? I put together this timeline graphic. The data behind it is all bogus. It's just for me to make the lines that I'm feeling, right? But I did color in the years here. And you can see in this era, we could call it an era like BattleTech, and it would definitely be the Dark Ages. So we have a Game of Armored Combat box set here, which has standees in it, no plastic yet. The WizKids click game, MechWarrior Dark Ages, is also very prominent. This is probably the thing that's most in people's eye line right now for this decade or so. The lore there, the game, it is not really a BattleTech, quote unquote, it's not classic BattleTech, it's not Alpha Strike, right? It's a game of its own. The lore and stories are a bit different as well too. Love it or hate it, it kind of was a double-edged sword. It did turn off existing BattleTech players to it, but it also, because of its prominence and footprint in game stores, it actually exposed a lot of people to BattleTech. So there are people now in the buying up all the current modern Catalyst products that came from this because of the visibility. All right. And then later on, we actually do get what I would call our protoplastics for staying with our Catalyst naming, right? These are some of the very first plastics in the box set that's being produced in a BattleTech box. I do not think, though, they were produced at high enough volume to really have an impact, and the sculpts are admittedly a little bit interesting, shall we say. They've got a charm of their own, right? Then we move into what I would call the pre-modern plastics era, and this is really about Catalyst learning what these box sets and lance packs are about. So we can kind of skip over the first introductory box set and go right to the 25th anniversary edition box set, and then further packaging out the plastics that were in there into 8 lance packs with Alpha Strike cards. That's right. These sculpts are better, either through plastic or different molds or something, especially the 25th anniversary box and on. And I think Catalyst sees it in the demand, right? These were actually relatively difficult to come by. I think they were also bought up pretty heavily by BattleTech fans. There's a glimmer of a spark here, and I think Catalyst knows it has, if it continues to refine that, it might really have something. And that's what happens in 2019. Early in January, we get our modern beginners box, and then later on we get the new A Game of Armored Combat with the modern plastics in it that we know and love. And this begins a rocket ship ride, because from what I can tell, nobody can keep those things in stock. Catalyst is always super anemic with supply. They were afraid to take a loss, sales write-downs. They didn't want to tick off retail by producing a stinker there and having everybody have to liquidate oversupply. So these were BattleTech prior to this era, our modern era, was always chronically undersupplied. So when these box sets hit, people they caught people's eyes, and people bought them up, and they were produced initially to low quantity, and people just Catalyst could tell they really have something here. And that leads them to where I think they've been planning, many more lance packs like they had done previously. And they used the Clan Invasion Kickstarter to see how many of these are we going to fund. So in that sense, the Clan Invasion Kickstarter was like a quote-unquote true Kickstarter in a way. Mostly to fund the box, but also how deep and wide are we going to go? Maybe wide. How wide are we going to go in lance pack creation, right? And I got to say, I think that may be the funnest Kickstarter I ever participate in. That was such a good time. Even for all the problems it had, it was really well done. And yes, some things hard to deliver, overpromised on, but you know what? All in all, I think a really net good positive for BattleTech and the IP, and got us the very recognizable Mad Cat, Timberwolf there. So that was incredible. And Catalyst didn't slow down here. They kept going by releasing those force packs that they just funded there into retail channels. And as much as I loathe to say it, very smart on the Barnes & Noble and Target exclusives. What those things are doing is sitting in shelf space where potential gamers are going to browse gaming goods. And so that is a lot of good net new marketing exposure that they're getting. People are finding BattleTech for the first time. Like those lance packs, how beautiful they are with the graphics behind them. You can see all the minis in the clear plastic right there, staring you in the face. Like, really, really good and smart. So that brings us to where I didn't see it coming. Catalyst didn't see it coming. The Mercenaries Kickstarter, which is just another giant rocket ship upwards, right? And I think it's really important for us to look at these two Kickstarters. We're talking, Clan Invasion is 11,000 backers, spending about $230 on average, and it's delivered in 2020. Then 4 years later, we're delivering another giant Kickstarter, which has over twice the amount of backers and just a bit over, actually more than a bit over, about $80 more in the average pledge level from people. That is huge, right? There's a lot of plastic mechs flying about right now. And so that leads us to kind of this current era. We know a little bit about what's coming over on this side based on forecasts coming out of Adepticon News, Karinsky Con. We have some understanding there. So why do I think it's going to flatten out? Again, the macro picture, and then this is the how we got here. So this is kind of I really do think we're getting to a peak. I'm also going to do this. I've got to say this. So yes, there are people that just generally dislike Catalyst for whatever reason, and they will discount what they would probably say. This graph only exists because of some other reason. One that I hear an awful lot is just because of the fans or the fan base. That's fine. But then I point back to Dark Ages and go, if the fan base is so strong, why wasn't there a giant blip there? And the answer is because the product wasn't good. When people say, that wasn't really BattleTech. Well, yeah, it actually was. It's got mechs in it. It has similar lore. It's the same factions. Well, the different new ones are born as well, too. But, the reason why we are at such a high is because of these great products. I don't think anyone can discount that. So, yes. All right, back to this. So, we had our market conditions, which are a drag. We've had this big run-up right now with Catalyst using these Kickstarters, which are big rocket ship booms. And now we have a product forecast. And what in the product strategy leads me to believe that this is going to be flat? Well, because the product strategy is to rain force packs down onto us. There's going to be at least 32 plus for the next 3-4 years, or 3 years, whatever this is. 2, if I can do math. Excuse me for the cough. You can hear it. My audio is better, but I'm getting over a cold. So why won't these 32 force packs produce a spike? And you probably can guess what I might say about that. We also know there's these weapon emplacements that are probably going to come. Those are maybe potentially more interesting. Why? Because they're not mechs. Our mech demand has been saturated, right? Catalyst has done a good job of fulfilling the demand that's there. BattleTech Aces, I think that could be impactful. That one seems like, man, why don't you wrap that up in a box set with 2 different mechs or alternate sculpts or something like that? That would be a great way to sell that one. That could be slightly impactful. Catalyst has also mentioned terrain. I kind of put a question mark here, though, because I don't know if that's what they mean by the weapon emplacements. If they are selling terrain, I think they're a little too late to the party. Hextech is great. There's other 3D prints out there available. I don't know, unless they're selling terrain, maybe with rules. I don't see that producing a blip. And they're also saying no new Kickstarter, or a small one only. When they do run that will be maybe a little spike, so maybe that will get us over the perfect peak here. But in all reality, it's not going to have as big of an effect as we've had now. So low impact. I don't think you're producing spikes here. I think you're just kind of maintaining or drifting down. all these force packs, you're going to reprint boxes, you're going to continue to do your lore splat books and things like that. I think it's all just generally maintaining. Why? Because our shelves are full. We have so many mechs right now, or are about to, if you're just participating, if Mercs is your first one, or are going to buy them at retail, right? But the shelves are full of mechs, so I don't think this pushes a spike upward. What could have high impact though? What could grow things more? And if my made up graph there is like total net players buzz around BattleTech the IP, I think products with new gameplay could produce more buzz, right? That's why I think ASUS is impactful. Marketing and different exposure to potential players, right? That could make the needle move as well. And then making converts, stealing people away from their other primary game that they're playing over towards BattleTech. And I want to double click on that one, because this is the big one I think a lot of us think about with our wargaming goggles on. We want Catalyst to run like a traditional miniature wargaming company, and they're really, or a miniature wargaming company focus only, and that's not really what they are. So we could have, from our perspective and belief, that BattleTech has so many good eyes on it, such a good fan base right now, why won't you do these things? There are some reasons that we'll get into, but if it's me, or probably a lot of people have thought this way too, so you got all these mechs on shelves, now you got to incentivize people to paint them and play them. So that's probably local game store support. And specifically, the goal from Catalyst would be get a BattleTech night on an FLGS calendar. What can you find at a local FLGS calendar right now? Almost assuredly, yes, I'm sure there's some with BattleTech nights out there. But how can we get more? Or how could it be one of the three that I'm about to name? If you go into almost any local game store in the United States of America and look at their calendar of when there's some organized play events there, I guarantee you will find three. Magic, some sort of RPG, probably Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and what? Yes, a GW Warhammer 40k adjacent, some sort of GW product. Now, maybe there's a little sprinkling of Bolt Action or other indie games or other meta stuff that might be there. There might be the remnants of X-Wing or Star Wars Armada or Legion or something like that floating around there too. But BattleTech would be in that uncommon tailing end there. How do we get BattleTech to be one of the main games that is sought after and played? There's some other things you have to do to be able to do that, but one thing as well too you're going to need to do is give a reason for the FLGS to stock your stuff on shelves, which means you want people buying from the game store, which means you need to kind of be doing something that is, I hate it, but it's needed, seasonal in a way. That doesn't mean we're rotating models out that you can't use anymore, or burning the rule set with a torch, or it might though mean releasing a narrative campaign book like, say, Hinterlands, with a lot of juicy lore around it that people can sink their teeth into, and then they're like, hey, this Jade Falcon Lance over here that I never would buy because I'm not a Jade Falcon fan, this stuff's actually pretty cool. I think I might need that for all those birdie flying rides over there. I'm you know what? I want to make a little Jade Falcon Lance, and I want to play it in a themed campaign at my game store. And this moves us from a Kickstarter boom bust or very spiky revenue stream to a steady revenue stream, and really gaining major dominance in kind of the view and footprint of the miniature wargaming hobby, right? So yeah, and the reasons why not, I mean, you can shake your fist at the sky, Catalyst, you should be this way, but you should go all in on BattleTech, but you got to realize that's a much riskier play. And BattleTech does have some other good IPs and things out there. Yes, far less known, like orders of magnitude less popular. Shadowrun, I guess Frostpunk upcoming, Leviathans is cool, built off a BattleTech skeleton, and then just other board games that they're selling as well too. And that's really the thing, is they're going much broader in their product line and a little less focused and niche specific. I also don't think they've really been thinking about, I could be wrong, I'm so happy to be surprised. Like, if this is coming, I would just be jumping up and down. I'd be so excited, and I'd be looking at 3 local hobby stores near me to be doing this and go participate. It would be awesome. But their demo team right now seems more geared towards training people at conventions or at a few other hotspots. And I actually don't think they need to be, they do need to still do that, but I think their quote unquote demo team or their BattleTech ambassadors need to really be the ones setting up and driving these narrative campaigns, working with the game store to coordinate receiving the support goods, the awards for the painting contest, for best single mech and best unit, right? And the award for most impactful player during the campaign, or whatever these things are, right? The fun, kind of the little spice added to really get us painting and playing. So yeah, I just don't see it geared that way. And, so if you believe me here and see what I see, and I'm not trying to persuade anybody of this. This is just kind of my thought exercise and what things are feeling like to me right now. Does this peak even matter? And the answer is yes and no. It's a long build up and disappointing drop, like right out of some dubstep music. It matters to me that I did this and kind of see it so that I don't not appreciate where we've gotten to in BattleTech. I think it is, again, this golden time for as much quote-unquote problems as there may be in Mercenaries Kickstarter, or things that you don't necessarily agree with how Catalyst is running things, or whatever. There are so many more BattleTech players out there. There's so much fun content on YouTube and on the internets to go and browse, and things that people are doing with BattleTech right now. It's just a great time to be a BattleTech fan. So I don't want to lose sight of that, and I want to appreciate kind of where we've gotten to and take advantage of it. It's kind of now. Now is the time. Mech Warriors, go. So if you enjoyed this and suffered through my ramblings here for this long, I really appreciate it. If you want to tell me why I'm right or wrong in the comments, or have something to say, I always appreciate the interaction. I try and reply back to most of y'all, and hope you're having a good one. My Kickstarter should arrive today, so says shipping, so I'm hoping to do a relatively creative unboxing next week, and I'll catch you later. Bye.